Hey there, Five Falcons. It's Tuesday, October 18th, 2022, and these are your morning announcements. At Fife Elementary, Falcons rise to new heights by demonstrating the traits of being responsible, inclusive, safe, and empathetic. Our specialist day is day 2. Reminder for Five Falcons, there is no school starting tomorrow, and the rest of the week it is conferences. Also today, we have the following after-school activities: Crisscross and Little Kids Rock Modern Band. It is time for our Five Falcons Rise recognition, and we have to recognize Will in Mrs. Gore's class. Each morning during Mrs. Gore's morning meeting, Mrs. Itcheride has observed Will choosing to sit by a new Ukrainian's friends. He is gentle and kind, and he tries to help them understand the topics and questions. He demonstrates inclusion and is a great example to all the learners in Mrs. Gore's class on how to include students who are learning English. Way to go, Will! And also Kat in Mrs. Humphrey's class. While at the bathroom, Kat saw a friend who needed someone to hold her ring while she washed her hand. Kat stepped up and offered to help her and waited patiently until the friend was done. This is a great way to show empathy by helping a friend in need. Nice job, Falcons. We love seeing you rise in action. All right, long list of birthdays because we have today and all the days we have off. Henry in Mrs. Lawrence's class. Kevin in Mrs. Sin's class, Jenna in Mr. Smear's class, and Jordan in Mrs. Dorn's class. Also, Tavion in Mrs. Jean's class, Mac in Mrs. Johnson's class, Emily in Mrs. Pollen's class, Gonor in Mrs. Driscoll's class, Jeremiah in Mrs. Humphrey's class, Dylan in Mrs. Lemaster's class, Adasha in Mrs. Bayless's class, Elijah in Mrs. Young's class, Tasia in Mrs. Sin's class, Jason in Mr. Stewart's class, Aiden in Mr. Lemon's class, Taylor in Mrs. Johnson's class, and Michelle in Mrs. Pickle's class. And also this weekend is Mr. Smith's birthday, so please give him a early happy birthday. Here is a fun fact for the day. Did you know that applesauce was the first food eaten in space by astronauts? Huh, didn't know that. All right, Five Falcons, go out there and be great today. Don't waste time being average. And if no one tells you today they love you, know that Fife Elementary does. At this time, please stand for the flag salute.